Okay. I want to move on a little bit to talk about council audience stuff, and I want to move in kind of in the area of good government. One of the things that I've witnessed at the council, and I've been to, I think, as an audience member, a fair number of council meetings. I've been to a lot of alcohol, gaming, and tobacco meetings. I've been to a lot of planning commission meetings, different things. But one of the dynamics that I see in our government is that the group who shows up at city council and speaks the loudest oftentimes wins the argument. Now, Tony, you know about the smoking debate. That was a long, protracted, I never got as many emails, and that's poor English, but I got a ton of emails. I mean, I got a stack of them on the smoking thing. And, I mean, you can go to issue by issue by issue. And those who show up there, regardless of policy, they get the vote. How do we change that? I mean, what is it about our city that reacts to that? Whether it's, you know, seating on the sidewalk or what have you.
Well, I'd like to respond to that.
Please.
And I'm going to use the Project Labor as my example. I actually went to that city council meeting.
Yes, I remember.
We talked about that. And I couldn't get through the door.
It was packed.
And
I was in the minority that night, by the way.
Yeah, I would have been a minority as well. And that's the primary example of sitting at City Hall, sitting in front of those people. You think you have the majority. And the key is you got to remember there's a certain amount of our family workforce standing in front of you that's going to reap rewards from this ordinance. And there's going to be a larger chunk of people, our working families, that are losing because of this ordinance. And the taxpayers, which better be all of us, are losing even more. And that's the part, as a city councilor, you have to accept other people's opinions, but you have to go out in the neighborhoods and trust the people you talk to. And this could be your friends, this could be acquaintances, and when you work in the restaurant industry, sometimes this could be your guests, from prior experience.
But, and Andy, I don't know, you say how do we change it? I don't know if we do change it. I think that's the way the system is supposed to work. And I don't necessarily agree that the more people who come to speak, the more likely the council is to vote with the masses. And I can honestly say I don't think I've ever sat up there and said, well, more people spoke for this than against it, so I'm going to vote for it. And I don't think any of the councilors do that. I think it makes the decision a little more difficult at times, but I think that's how the process is supposed to work. And yeah, we're our own worst enemy at times if people don't get involved and they don't come and they express their opinions. I think that's important. The only time I think it makes a difference is if somebody's got something that they bring forward and you've got 10 people that speak for it and nobody from the community shows up to speak against it. Well, you kind of assume that it's going to be okay with the neighbors if no one has a problem with it, assuming they were notified properly. So I think that's how it does work. It shows that people are interested. It shows people care. And this, in the last 3.5 years, I mean, it's been better the last year and a half. But we started out on my term with the smoking issue. We had the 10 Commandments issue. We had the rental issue once. We had the rental issue twice, and I don't know what other things we've had. But we had meetings that were going on until 11 o'clock at night, and that's because people are concerned and they show up. And so I don't think we try to change that. I think we try to encourage that. And, unfortunately, a lot of the speakers speak for 3 minutes on the same exact thing that the person before them spoke about, so that gets frustrating, but that's what it's all about.
So I'd like to go back to the smoking ban and what you had showing up at City Hall, where the business owners or managers, employees who are going to be affected negatively, and you had the proponents for the smoking ban. And you had a 60% of the population that didn't care either way. They were fine with the way things were until some group stepped up and said, we need to change this.
But that's what's supposed to happen.
It is, but the other side of it is there's plenty of people that it doesn't impact their lives. They go to restaurants and make their own choices. They're comfortable making their own choices. They don't need City Hall to dictate what their choices should be.
Exactly, I agree. But it still doesn't mean you take away the right of the City Council to make that decision, and that's why I voted against it, because it shouldn't have been the government's position.
Okay,
decision.
Jack, it's critical
when you're putting people in this position, when you're selecting city council people, and your mayor and the rest of them, that you put in people that have an understanding of the entire population and some intelligence to make some of these decisions. You can't just pass them off to the administration. You've got to use the council. Have good people on the council, and you get good ideas, and you get good legislation.
And know what their priorities are.
That's right.
Okay,
If you know what your priorities are, then you
Okay.
can make a sound decision.
John?
Just briefly, in 2004, they were going to close 3 elementary schools, Piedmont, Grant, and Chester. Long story short, my dad passed away. I didn't want any part of the fight. I was in a bad place. My wife said they were going to close the school in 6 weeks. The next day I showed up at the school board, declared war on the school district. Within that 6 weeks' time, I personally, myself, no one else, contacted the state of Minnesota, found out that one time before had a referendum been reversed. So I had precedent. I contacted an attorney. I paid for all the fees on my own dollar. A lot of people said I'll pay it back on the cost. I picked up the whole tab myself. In 6 weeks' time, I had a petition to reverse the tax referendum at $14.7 million. Not only did the school board not close Piedmont, my particular school, but they closed Chester, but they made a moratorium that they'd keep all of the rest of the elementary schools open for at least 5 years. That was one person, myself, that took on the school board mano a mano. And I tell you what, if you have a passion for what you believe in, you can do anything. It's called leadership.
Okay, let's talk about leadership fiscally. We're facing some pretty big hurdles in our town. So is the challenge that we somehow, what do we do? Do we raise taxes? I mean, you all hated the tax question when I asked you that. And by the way, I didn't print it, so none of your answers are public yet. But what do we do about taxes in this town? I mean, taxes are going up, even though we haven't raised the rates. Well, house taxes are going up. We have a sales tax in our town. We're the only town in the state of Minnesota. The 1% sales tax goes into our general fund. What do people think?
Taxes are inevitable, but if you can get something for what you're paying for, people, I think, would accept it. But right now, we're paying more, and we're getting nothing to show for it. Our streets are in disrepair, our infrastructure's falling apart. What are we paying for? First thing you gotta do is to solve the AFSCME crisis in the city, let them strike. Let's find out who can hold out. And I tell you what, before we can have civility in this town, we gotta have some archaic, we gotta have the battle of all battles and just see where it lies.
So for you, it's about accountability.
It's about accountability, and there's
You
none.
might think about raising taxes if people knew what they're getting.
Yeah,
for their
if
money.
we knew what we're getting,
Okay.
all we're doing is paying and receiving nothing.
Okay.
I think we need to press the administration to complete that contract process with AFSCME and address the 14 recommendations that were approved by the council a couple of years ago. And the only things that have been implemented in those 14 recommendations are increasing the taxes, utility rates, and the trust fund as well, utilizing that. I think we need to get back to the basics of city government. We have a $7 million budget deficit, and I think we need to take a good look at our city government, at what we can provide, and it better be the basic services first, and insist that that contract is completed, so we can move on and work on supporting our businesses and
Okay.
increase the tax base.